Good morning and welcome back to the exclusive coverage of the inauguration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. The Black Press is live. We are bringing you feed from directly from the Capitol. But right now we love to welcome and it's a privilege to welcome in our publisher from the Mississippi Link, Jackie Hampton. Jackie, welcome.
Thank you so much. I am so excited today, and I'm happy to be with you this morning.
And what's the feeling down in Mississippi today, down in Jackson?
Well, look, I'm only around very, very, very positive people. We're all excited, can hardly wait until the noon hour. We have someone special covering the inauguration ceremony here in this building and everywhere I go. From the moment I left home this morning, people are joyous. People are excited. I have not met anybody who does not show that excitement.
Well, fantastic. And of course, we have our president and CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis. Dr. Chavis is a very young 23 years old. Dr. Chavis, welcome back.
Good morning. Good morning. Jackie Hamilton of the Mississippi Link, thank you so much. Jackie Hamilton is also the National Secretary of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. We thank you for your service. We thank you for your leadership. And we're glad to hear that our brothers and sisters in Mississippi are celebrating today. Lord, we need some positive news, and this orderly transition of power today is definitely not only positive news, but it's welcomed news for Black Americans, for all Americans who believe in democracy, who believe in equality, and who believe in equal justice. And of course, Mississippi is one of the places that we get a lot of our inspiration from, Jackie, and we thank you for your work there to keep our people informed through the Mississippi Link.
My pleasure.
Well, Jackie, we know that like everybody else, your paper, as you mentioned, you have a special reporter covering it. What is the Mississippi Link going to look like tomorrow and next week?
You know, we're still forming it. We keep changing our minds because something so exciting will happen, and then we'll change our cover. Last night, we were so excited to be a part of one of the pre-inaugural celebrations where the HBCUs showcased some of the bands, and Jackson State University, Sonic Boom of the South, was part of that celebration. And so we were so excited and so excited. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus spoke. I don't know if you had seen it on YouTube. We Are One was the title, an evening of celebration. We saw artists performing, HBCUs speaking, presidents. It was so encouraging to see the young people so excited and showcasing their talents. Yeah. And so we had that. And then, of course, the memorial for the 400,000 individuals that succumbed to COVID-19. There's so many things to cover. We look at this newly elected president who's going to church, and we look at the outgoing, shameful president. So we are so excited till we keep forming. I know my graphic artist is going to say you're changing again. I really, at this hour, I keep changing, what we want this cover to look like. It's so exciting, Stacy.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Well, as we get closer to the 11:30 time when the ceremonies are officially scheduled to kick off, just to let our viewers know, Lady Gaga is going to perform the national anthem. That's supposed to take place about 11:30 or shortly thereafter. There will be a performance by J-Lo. She's going to try and top her New Year's Eve performance. So, and then of course, Vice President Kamala Harris will be sworn in, and then President Joe Biden will be sworn in. We've been watching as the dignitaries like former President Clinton, former President Bush, and their spouses enter. We know that former President Barack Obama is also there, as well as members of Congress, the Senate. We do now see former Vice President Mike Pence has arrived and is entering the area where he will be seated as well. Dr. Chavis, that's what a transfer of power is supposed to look like.
Absolutely, it's a good thing, and uh, Vice President Pence is doing the right thing by being present, by saluting the incoming Vice President Kamala Harris, and by saluting the incoming President Joe Biden. That is the proper thing to do, the orderly thing to do. So Vice President Pence is in order, and former, now I can say, President Trump is in disorder. He's out of order. But what he came into the presidency out of order, and he's leaving the presidency today out of order. But this is not about Donald Trump today. This is about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And I'm glad that Vice President Pence is showing that he has some character and showing that he's respecting the Constitution of the United States with the orderly transfer of power.
And there are the Obamas, as you see. We mentioned that they were there, and now you see them. Good morning to KP Hodges. She's shouting out you, Jackie Hampton, and Angie Wellington. Good morning. Good to have you. We know we are having some issues on Facebook, but that was to be expected. They did announce that there would be these type of issues with some of our channels. But you can also see us on Twitter and at Black Press YouTube page, Black Press USA TV. Jackie, you've obviously seen other inaugurations. You've probably watched, whether near or far. What is the meaning of this one to the folks of Mississippi, to your readers in Jackson?
Well, this one is very historical. I thought in 2016, of course, it was so historical when President Obama was first elected. When he was first elected, so we were so excited both terms. But this one is so different. It's historical in that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and then we are witnessing the first African American Asian woman being vice president of these United States. So we are in a climate of excitement around here. Um, in that it's virtual. We do not have people there on the ground. We did not make reservations, and we're not fighting over who will get passes to actually go to the inauguration. But guess what? Everybody is able to attend. We can attend in our living rooms and in our workplace, anywhere in our vehicles. So it's very, very different. And it's an air of excitement everywhere. I mean, I'm sharing messages and tweets and um, texts and emails where everybody is so excited about every aspect of this inauguration. So yes, I'm happy to see Vice President Pence doing the right thing, that he's where he should be. Uh, and it shows that at this moment, he's definitely putting the country first. So I cannot put into words how exciting this is and how different it is. But at the same time, even though it's different, it is nonetheless so very exciting. And it's one we'll never, ever forget during
Yeah.
this climate.
Yeah, and good morning to Novice D. Johnson and Kay Hayes. Good to have you with us. And Wanda Hayes as well says, "Hey Jackie, we want to thank the Biden transition team and the inaugural committee for this live feed. We really appreciate all that they have done." Earlier, Jackie, I don't know if you was able to see, but we were showing clips of the interview that Joe Biden, then candidate Joe Biden, had with Dr. Chavis, and his greeting to you and other members of the Black Press. You were there also in South Carolina. Jackie, what was that like? And when you think about that day and meeting and talking with then candidate Biden, our chair earlier said she could feel his sincerity. What was your thoughts then?
I'm with the chair. You could feel his sincerity, and you could see his commitment, to the Black race. I had absolutely no doubts when I left Charlotte that Joe Biden would be a wonderful president. We had wonderful candidates running for this office, and he have. I'm so happy that he's privileged to have some of those individuals right there with him, such as Kamala Harris. But I tell you, I left there without a doubt that Joe Biden would serve this country well, that he would keep his promises he was making to us as members of the Black press. I cannot even put into words how excited I was to be a part of that. And thank you, Dr. Chavis, for making many of us, the executive board and some of the officers of the Nnpa, a part of that interview, because Joe Biden is so warm. He's so loving. He's so caring. He cares about everybody. And that sincerity was felt in that room the entire time when he came around and he shook each individual's hand. It was so important to him for us to just feel his spirit. And I definitely did. So I was so excited to be a part of everything he said. And he so far, we've seen him keep those promises. You see this diverse cabinet, it is so exciting to see someone follow through on what they said they will do. He's doing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jackie Hampton. I've known now President Biden to be a man of his word. You remember when we were with him in Charleston, South Carolina, he promised that his administration will be reflective of the diversity of America. And he's followed through on that commitment. He also promised that he's going to work more and more with the Black press, and we're going to hold him to that commitment. So we're also very hopeful. But thank you again, Jackie, for your leadership, not only in Mississippi, but also across the nation as our national secretary of the NNPA. We so very much appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we see the crowd now, we notice too the distance, the social distancing is being observed, and everybody was required to have a mask on. That is a Joe Biden requirement. It has been since the pandemic began back in March of 2020. So it's a big difference, Jackie. We saw events at the White House and other places with the former administration. Masks were optional and many didn't wear masks. There wasn't much social distancing at all. And we saw, unfortunately, even from those gatherings, there was death. We remember Herman Cain and others who lost their lives eventually to COVID because of gathering without masks at places that was really events given by the former administration. What else are you encouraged about, Jackie? As we've been running down a list of things that many seem to be encouraged by, but is there something in particular as it pertains to Jackson that you are hopeful for?
Well, one of the things looking forward to is I'm so involved and interested in our children's education. Of course, COVID-19 is at the forefront. We want to save lives. We want to end this pandemic. We want to get vaccinations, and we want vaccinations to be available so that we can, hurry and get this phase of this pandemic out of the way. But in so doing, we have to think about our children, those that are learning virtually and otherwise. They do need to be back in school. They do need to be with their friends. And meanwhile, I'm just so excited that we have someone new that will, Secretary of Education, that will help us to get back to where we need to be. We want our children to do well in spite of the pandemic. Some are really excited to have a niece that's excited about not going to school every day and learning virtually. She's having a ball, but she's still learning. But there are those who just don't have here in Mississippi who do not have internet. They cannot get the services that others have available to them. And we don't want them to be behind in their classwork. So I would just like to see a lot of emphasis placed on the education of our children at every age. We do not want to see our children left behind. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing what's going to be done there.
Yeah, and to your point, the challenges of distant learning are particularly pronounced in the African American community, where access to the internet, working parents, and a haphazard learning model have undermined pre-pandemic gains, right? And education experts have agreed that when students of color in underserved schools must go to blended or fully remote learning models, the digital divide gets broader and more profoundly affecting them. School attendance plummets, and the understanding of the curriculum that goes down, and the motivation to learn also tends to go away. But thanks to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they've been working in partnership. We've been working in partnership with them. The Nnpa, they've provided a grant that we can help out by getting the message out and really talking to people around the country and helping them with this distant learning and education in general.
Absolutely. Yes, we are so fortunate to have that grant and to continue getting the word out and making it easier for our children to be
Yeah.
educated. So I'm really grateful for that grant once again. They've been with us for several years now, and we're just so appreciative.
So our incoming vice president has just been introduced, Kamala
Yeah.
Harris, and her
Yeah.
husband.
And we got to
She's
go
there-
live there.
They're dressed in purple. Yes.
So her office within the Capitol will move
Yes.
from her senator's office to the vice president's office.
You know, it's really
Senate
Richard
side of
Nixon
Capitol.
that really transferred the location of the vice presidency, working towards the old executive office building.
And putting the locus of the vice president's office here at the Capitol. But of course, they are the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. All right, so on our camera there on the right, we can see Representative Hoyer in the red scarf, member of the Joint Committee, the JCIC, Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies. VP-elect Harris hugging her children there.
So Kamala Harris is a proud member of the AKA.
That's a moment there. Vice President.
VP
Vice
meeting
President.
VP.
Yeah, Howard University too.
And we're hearing from AKAs all over the country. I'm seeing it on the text here.
Yeah.
And notice the
And we also
furniture.
saw
Folding chairs out
a
there.
meeting
That's
there. Vice
real
President
a real table.
Mike Pence and new Vice President Kamala Harris. Again, that transfer, that peaceful transfer, Dr. Chavis.
Representative Clyburn there having
Yes.
VP like Harris.
It's very fitting that Vice President Pence is there. That's a good signal. That's a good sign.
And there's your homeboy, Jim Clyburn, the congressman
South
from
Carolina.
South Carolina.
Well, again, thank Jackie Hamilton for being with us. You know, everyone in Mississippi, all over the South. Jackie recalls last year we were there in Mississippi when they took down the symbol of the Confederate flag.
Snow flurries, it looks like in this shot of Chuck Schumer.
See the Confederate flag inside the Capitol on January the 6th. It just reminded us of our past, but we also know that our future is going to be much greater than our past.
Absolutely. Yes, we were the last state to remove that
Soon to be the 46th president.
There's our incoming president and incoming first lady.
Cross through the crypt.
Get ready to be introduced.
Dr. Joe Biden and President Joe Biden. They are about to be introduced and make their way to history.
you see inside of the Capitol there, in that same area on January 6th was full of righteous barbarians.
I
But
can't
now
stress enough that we have
it's been
cameras in
cleared.
areas that you won't see
And
on
it's
any
so
other live
peaceful.
stream or broadcast. These
Yeah,
times,
it's a total contrast than it was
The
2
The
weeks
Joint
ago. That's
Congressional
for
Committee
sure.
on Inaugural Ceremonies, Staff Representative Alexandria Gordican DeChico, accompanying the House Republican leader, the Honorable Kevin McCarthy. Staff Representative Bridget Brennan, accompanying House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steny Hoyer and Mrs. Yvette Lewis. Staff Representative Kate Knudsen, accompanying Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi and Mr. Paul Pelosi. Staff Representative Lindsey Kerr, accompanying the Honorable Amy Klobuchar and Mr. John Bessler. Staff Representative Stephanie Hager Mucko, accompanying Senate Majority Leader, the Honorable Mitch McConnell and the Honorable Elaine L. Chao. And Staff Representative Rochelle Graves Schroeder, accompanying the Chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Roy Blunt and Mrs. Abigail Blunt.
So those members of the JCEC, the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the official host of today's 59th inaugural ceremonies, we can see them there headed out onto the platform. The announcer just said the names.
Proud moment for the committee.
They've put all this together.
Not just September, well before that, the planning has gone on. And let's be honest, this has been a different inauguration and hopefully something that we won't see again for a lot of different reasons. And they've really pulled this off handsomely. There goes Senator Blunt, the former Majority Whip of the House. He's been through a few of these ceremonies. Again, this is the second time he has chaired this committee.
Yes.
There's been 5 people to chair the committee twice, and Senator Blunt would be the latest.
He spoke of this ceremony today being an assurance for all people, our continued and unbroken commitment, continuity, stability, perseverance, democracy. As we get ready to see the peaceful transfer of power, an event both commonplace and miraculous. President-elect Biden here and Dr. Jill Biden just passing through the crypt of the Capitol, soon to emerge onto the platform. We can see the back of the Obamas here on the platform. Cole and Ella, and it's snowing. Cole and Ella, VP Harris's children there. Ella is the young lady you see with the plaid coat with kind of a embellishment on the shoulder.
Ladies and gentlemen, accompanying the President-elect, the Staff Director of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Fitzhugh Elder IV, the Acting House Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, Tim Blodgett, and the Acting Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, Jennifer Hemingway.
You know, snow, not unheard of in Washington in January. But you know what? When they used to have these in March, snow was also not unheard of.
Not at all.
Until 1933, inaugurations happened in March, and pretty risky in the era before paved roads.
Well, our last inauguration, it was, we had a little bit of rain. President Trump, on our last inauguration, of course, President Obama, I think it was about 25 degrees.
The weather's always an element.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. and Dr. Jill Biden.
This piece by the Marine Band Trio from Hail America. A Marine Band known as the President's Own. They play at the pleasure of the President and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And they played at every inauguration since Jefferson's.
You see Biden give President Obama a hand kiss.
Yeah.
Reading for
Yeah.
President
And
VP.
Everybody.
Yep.
Turn it back.
Look at his eyes.
The pride.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
That's a phrase that is well welcomed right now. Let's enjoy the ceremony.
Please welcome the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Vice President Pence, Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, members of Congress and the judicial branch, former presidents and first ladies, vice presidents, leaders from abroad, and a whole bunch of Bidens. America, welcome to the 59th presidential inauguration, where in just a few moments, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take their solemn oaths. This ceremony is the culmination of 244 years of a democracy. It is the moment when leaders brought to this stage by the will of the people promised to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish it and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, guardians of our country. Have we become too jaded, too accustomed to the ritual of the passing of the torch of democracy to truly appreciate what a blessing and a privilege it is to witness this moment? I think not. 2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does: goes forward as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This conveyance of a sacred trust between our leaders and our people takes place in front of this shining Capitol dome for a reason. When Abraham Lincoln gave his first inaugural address in front of this Capitol, the dome was only partially constructed, braced by ropes of steel. He promised he would finish it. He was criticized for spending funds on it during the Civil War. To those critics, he replied, "If the people see the Capitol going on, it is a sign we intend the Union shall go on." And it did, and it will. Generations of Americans gave their lives to preserve our republic in this place. Great legislation to protect civil rights and economic security and lead the world was debated and crafted under this dome. Now it falls on all of us, not just the two leaders we are inaugurating today, to take up the torch of our democracy, not as a weapon of political arson, but as an instrument for good. We pledge today never to take our democracy for granted as we celebrate its remarkable strength. We celebrate its resilience, its grit. We celebrate the ordinary people doing extraordinary things for our nation, the doctors and nurses on the front line of this pandemic, the officers in the Capitol, a new generation never giving up hope for justice. We celebrate a new president, Joe Biden, who vows to restore the soul of America and cross the river of our divides to a higher plane. And we celebrate our first African American, first Asian American, and first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, who stands on the shoulders of so many on this platform who have forged the way to this day. When she takes the oath of office, little girls and boys across the world will know that anything and everything is possible. And in the end, that is America, our democracy, a country of so much good. And today, on these Capitol steps and before this glorious field of flags, we rededicate ourselves to its cause. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce to you the senator who has worked with me and so many others to make this ceremony possible, my friend and the chair of the inaugural committee, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt.
Well, I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved, at least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning. Of all the things we'd considered, I don't think snow was on my agenda till I walked out the door a moment ago. But thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and thanks to the other members of the Joint Congressional Committee on the Inauguration as we officially begin the 59th inaugural ceremony. I also want to thank the Joint Committee staff and our partners, particularly our security partners, for the way they've dealt with unprecedented circumstances. When I chaired the inauguration 4 years ago, I shared President Reagan's 1981 description of this event as commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Americans have celebrated this moment during war, during depression, and now during pandemic. Once again, all three branches of our government come together as the Constitution envisions. Once again, we renew our commitment to our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union. That theme for this inauguration, our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union, was announced by the Joint Committee before the election with the belief that the United States can only fulfill its promise and set an example for others if we are always working to be better than we have been. The Constitution established that determined democracy with its first three words, declaring the people as the source of the government. The Articles of Confederation hadn't done that. The Magna Carta hadn't done that. Only the Constitution says the government exists because the people are the source of the reason it exists. They immediately followed those first three words with the words to form a more perfect union. The founders did not say to form a perfect union. They did not claim that in our new country nothing would need to be improved. Fortunately, they understood that always working to be better would be the hallmark of a great democracy. The freedoms we have today, the nation we have today, is not here just because it happened, and they aren't complete. A great democracy working through the successes and failures of our history, striving to be better than it had been. And we are more than we have been, and we are less than we hope to be. The assault on our Capitol at this very place just 2 weeks ago reminds us that a government designed to balance and check itself is both fragile and resilient. During the last year, the pandemic challenged our free and open society and called for extraordinary determination and sacrifice, and still challenges us today. Meeting that challenge head on have been and are healthcare workers, scientists, first responders, essential frontline workers, and so many others we depend on in so many ways. Today we come to this moment, people all over the world, as we're here, are watching and will watch what we do here. Our government comes together. The Congress and the courts join the transition of executive responsibility. One political party more pleased today and on every inaugural day than the other. But this is not a moment of division, it's a moment of unification. A new administration begins and brings with it a new beginning. And with that, our great national debate goes forward, and a determined democracy will continue to be essential in pursuit of a more perfect union and a better future for all Americans. What a privilege for me to join you today. Thank you. I'm pleased to call to the podium a longtime friend of the president-elect and his family, Father Leo O'Donovan, to lead us in an invocation. Please stand if you are able and remain standing for the national anthem and the pledge to our flag.
Gracious and merciful God, at this sacred time we come before you in need, indeed on our knees. But we come still more with hope and with our eyes raised anew to the vision of a more perfect union in our land, a union of all our citizens to promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We are a people of many races, creeds, and colors, national backgrounds, cultures, and styles, now far more numerous and on land much vaster than when Archbishop John Carroll wrote his prayer for the inauguration of George Washington 232 years ago. Archbishop Carroll prayed that you, O Creator of all, would assist with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude the President of these United States, that his administration may be conducted in righteousness and be eminently useful to your people. Today we confess our past failures to live according to our vision of equality, inclusion, and freedom for all. Yet we resolutely commit still more now to renewing the vision, to caring for one another in word and deed, especially the least fortunate among us, and so becoming a light for the world. There is a power in each and every one of us that lives by turning to every other one of us, a thrust of the Spirit to cherish and care and stand by others, and above all, those most in need. It is called love, and its path is to give ever more of itself. Today, it is called American patriotism, born not of power and privilege, but of care for the common good, with malice toward none and with charity for all. For our new president, we beg of you the wisdom Solomon sought when he knelt before you and prayed for an understanding heart so that I can govern your people and know the difference between right and wrong. We trust in the counsel of the letter of James. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Pope Francis has reminded us how important it is to dream together. By ourselves, he wrote, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. Be with us, holy mystery of love, as we dream together. Help us under our new president to reconcile the people of our land, restore our dream and invest it with peace and justice and the joy that is the overflow of love. To the glory of your name, forever, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our national colors by the Armed Forces Color Guard, the singing of our national anthem, and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies and gentlemen, here for the singing of our national anthem, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band, please welcome Lady Gaga.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombers singing loud, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the city of South Fulton, Georgia Fire and Rescue Department, President of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 3920, Fire Captain Andrea M. Hall, for the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What you are all about to be part of, America, is a historic moment of firsts. To administer the oath to our first African American, our first Asian American, and our first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, it is my great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome Jennifer Lopez to perform This Land Is Your Land and America the Beautiful, accompanied by members of the President's Own United States Marine Band.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me, as I went walking down that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that in the skyway, I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Oh, this land, oh, this land was made for you and me. Oh, this land, this land was made for you and me. You and me. Oh, America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood. From sea to shining sea. Una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Let's get loud. This land was made for you and me.
Well, that was great. The sun is shining, and Mr. President-elect, this is the first inauguration in the history of America where J-Lo was the warm-up act for Chief Justice Roberts. With that, it is now my distinct honor to introduce the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, John Roberts, to administer the presidential oath to the next President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
The 46th President of the United States of America, Joe Biden. There you saw it here live. Dr. Chavis, I want to go to you first.
Well, we've just witnessed history. We've witnessed the first Black woman vice president of the United States, and we've witnessed the oath of office of Joe Biden as president of the United States. On behalf of the Black press of America, we're proud to witness this moment. We're proud to report this moment to our constituencies across America and throughout the world. And we're very pleased to have one of our officers, Jackie Hamilton, our National Secretary, to also be with us as a distinguished publisher of the Mississippi Link, to also witness with us this historic moment.
Jackie Hampton, I want to ask you specifically about Vice President Kamala Harris. So what was your thoughts? What was running through your mind as she took the oath? And then you heard Joe Biden yell, "All right." What was your thoughts?
Well, I am so excited till I'm almost speechless. I'm overwhelmed. But the first thing that ran through my mind, I can get Vice President-elect and President-elect out of my vocabulary. I can say out of my vocabulary, out of my mouth when we talk about them. So now we have a vice president that we are so very proud of. She attended an HBCU. She has done so many things to inspire our young people, and she inspires me each and every day. We say, we tell our children, you can obtain all kinds of things. Just look at her as an example. But we as publishers, as ladies and gentlemen, we too can be inspired by what she has accomplished.
Jackie, let me cut in for a second. I'm sorry. Let's hear the remarks. I think the president is going to make some remarks.
Right, the 46th President of the United States.
Chief Justice Roberts, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Leader McConnell, Vice President Pence, my distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This is America's day. This is democracy's day, a day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Through a crucible for the ages, America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge. Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious, democracy is fragile. And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. So now, on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago, violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation, under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. As we look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I know the resilience of our Constitution and the strength of our nation, as does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who cannot be with us today, but whom we salute for his lifetime in service. I've just taken the sacred oath each of those patriots have taken. The oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us, but on all of us, on we the people who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation. We are good people. And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far, but we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities. Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once in a century virus that silently stalks the country. It's taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. In another January, on New Year's Day in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote, "If my name ever goes down into history, it'll be for this act, and my whole soul is in it." My whole soul is in it. Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this. Bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause. Uniting to fight the foes we face: anger, resentment and hatred, extremism, lawlessness, violence, disease, joblessness, and hopelessness. With unity, we can do great things, important things. We can right wrongs. We can put people to work in good jobs. We can teach our children in safe schools. We can overcome the deadly virus. We can reward work and rebuild the middle class and make healthcare secure for all. We can deliver racial justice, and we can make America once again the leading force for good in the world. I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real. But I also know they are not new. Our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we're all are created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization have long torn us apart. The battle is perennial, and victory is never assured. Through Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11, through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed. In each of these moments, enough of us have come together to carry all of us forward. And we can do that now. History, faith, and reason show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward. And we must meet this moment as the United States of America. If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail. We have never, ever, ever, ever failed in America when we've acted together. And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh, all of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this. America has to be better than this. And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around. Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, as was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War, when the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance. Yet we endured. We prevailed. Here we stand, looking out on the Great Mall, where Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand, where 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women marching for the right to vote. And today, we mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change. Here we stand, across the Potomac from Arlington Cemetery, where heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion rest in eternal peace. And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to stop the work of our democracy, to drive us from this sacred ground. It did not happen. It will never happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever, not ever. To all those who supported our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you've placed in us. To all those who did not support us, let me say this. Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. And if you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America. The right to dissent peaceably within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps this nation's greatest strength. Yet hear me clearly. Disagreement must not lead to disunion. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans, all Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine, a saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. Defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects we as Americans love that define us as Americans? I think we know. Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity, respect, honor, and yes, the truth. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders. Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs. I understand, like my dad, they lay at bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage? Thinking about their families, about what comes next. I promise you, I get it. But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions, distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, or rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and humility, and if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes. Because here's the thing about life. There's no accounting for what fate will deal you. Some days, when you need a hand. There are other days when we're called to lend a hand. That's how it has to be. That's what we do for one another. And if we are this way, our country will be stronger, more prosperous, more ready for the future. And we can still disagree. My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need each other. We need all our strength to persevere through this dark winter. We're entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. One nation. And I promise you this, as the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. We will get through this together. Together. Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve with in the House and the Senate up here, we all understand the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges. And we'll lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. We'll be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security. Look, you all know we've been through so much in this nation. And my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer. Remember all those who we lost in this past year to the pandemic. Those 400,000 fellow Americans, moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. We'll honor them for becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. So I ask you, let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives and those left behind, and for our country. Amen. Folks, this is a time of testing. We face an attack on our democracy and on truth, a raging virus, growing inequity, the sting of systemic racism, a climate in crisis, America's role in the world. Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways. But the fact is, we face them all at once, presenting this nation with one of the gravest responsibilities we've had. Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up, all of us? It's time for boldness, for there's so much to do. And this is certain. I promise you, we will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era. We will rise to the occasion is the question. Will we master this rare and difficult hour? Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world to our children? I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will. And when we do, we'll write the next great chapter in the history of the United States of America, the American story. A story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me. It's called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, at least for me, and it goes like this. The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you. Let's us add our own work and prayers to the unfolding story of our great nation. If we do this, then when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best, they did their duty, they healed a broken land. My fellow Americans, I close the day where I began, with the sacred oath. Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America. And I'll give all of you, keep everything I do in your service, thinking not of power, but of possibilities, not of personal interest, but the public good. And together we shall write an American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness, a story of decency and dignity, love and healing, greatness and goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, and the story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history. We met the moment. Democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die on our watch, but thrived. That America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. That is what we owe our forebears, one another, and generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, America.
Well, there it is. President Joe Biden. And Jackie Hampton of the Mississippi Link, Dr. Chavis, our president, he brought out some points here. He says, my whole soul is in it. Unity is the pathway forward. He said, uncivil war. He wants to stop that. There's red versus blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. Jackie, talk to us a little bit about that.
The thing that stood out most, and you said it, my whole soul is in it, and you felt it. So all of the items that our new president named that he wants to see do or undo are so important to this nation, to this democracy. And I'm going to tell you, Stacy, God sent this man to us at this time. You wondered why, was it 30 years ago, he wanted to become president of these United States, and we never, that was not his time. God had a time for him. And though there were many that helped carry out God's plan, there is no doubt in my mind and in my heart that this was his time. And that's why. That's why when he said in 2017, and he heard some of the words that the former president stated, there are good people on both sides, and he said, he's got to run, he's got to change this. I feel it so deep in my bones that this was his time. This is Kamala Harris's time. And together, I'm so hopeful that we're going to see a new nation united. And if those words didn't ring in everybody's heart, regardless whether you voted for him, helped him to become president, if that didn't happen through that speech, I don't know what will do it. But we must remember who's in charge. And I know who's in charge. So all I can say is I'm excited this day. I hope I can come down and do the work at hand as I get ready to sign off, because there is a lot of work we have to do. But we have a leader that we can believe in, and we have a vice president that we can believe in, and there is so much hope. There is so much hope.
Yeah, well, Jackie Hampton of the Mississippi Link, I know you got a paper to put out. We so thank you for joining us. Stay tuned as we continue our live coverage. Any last parting words for Jackie Hampton, Dr. Chavis?
No, just want to thank you once again and give our best wishes to all of our brothers and sisters in Mississippi. And we look forward to seeing you in a week or so for the Midwinter Conference, Jackie, and the board meeting.
Okay.
I do want to say that what President Biden said in his inaugural address was the importance of facts, was the importance of truth. He talked about answering the call of history. Well, that is the mission of the Black press. We address the facts, we report the truth, and we'll continue to answer our call of history. So thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. And as we continue our live coverage, Dr. Chavis, we already got a statement in from Congressman Al Green out of Texas. He says the inauguration of President Joseph Biden symbolizes more than our typical quadrennial transference of power. It represents the end of a shameful, insightful presidency that brought harm to our nation, as well as the beginning of a pivotal opportunity for our nation to build back better.
Yes.
It goes along with what you were saying and what you pulled out of President Biden's inaugural speech. He's touched on everybody, and he mentioned obviously the moment of silence for the 400,000 plus COVID victims. Yes. He also mentioned unity. He never mentioned the former president by name. I think that's a signal too that the president is ready to move forward.
Oh, absolutely. It was a positive message. It was a message dealing with the reality of the pandemic, the reality of systemic racism. But he mentioned that, at the end of that mall is where Dr. King made the famous I Have a Dream speech in 1963. And this is 2000. And so I think that we need now to, the little sister is going to, the poet, the youngest person to give a poetry. So we should tune in to hear her words. Let's hear it.
Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is hours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from our bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
That was incredible, Dr. Chavis.
Yes, yes. Well, it shows you the talent, the genius. I mentioned in our morning segment about the new generation of freedom fighters, the new generation of poets, of authors, of cultural artists. and that's the legacy. So we have much to be thankful for, much to be hopeful for as we let this day continue.
Yeah, and just a bit of history too. We know that Joe Biden served as vice president under Barack Obama. He is the 15th vice president who later became president. He is only the second, along with Richard Nixon, to have a gap between serving as vice president and being elected president. There have been 8 vice presidents who were first elected because the sitting president died. 6 vice presidents were first elected to the presidency, and 1 vice president was elevated because the sitting president resigned, and we know who that was.
Right. I think we get ready to have the benediction.
And the holiness of your beauty. We seek your face, your smile, your warm embrace. We petition you once more in this celebration. We pray for divine favor upon our president, Joseph R. Biden, and our First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, and their family. We further ask that you would extend the same favor upon our Vice President, Kamala D. Harris, and our second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, and their family. More than ever, they and our nation need you. We need you, for in you we discover our common humanity. In our common humanity, we will seek out the wounded and bind their wounds. We will seek healing for those who are sick and diseased. We will mourn our dead. We will befriend the lonely, the least, and the left out. We will share our abundance with those who are hungry. We will do justly to the oppressed, acknowledge sin, and seek forgiveness, thus grasping reconciliation. In discovering our humanity, we will seek the good in and for all our neighbors. We will love the unlovable, remove the stigma of the so-called untouchables. We will care for our most vulnerable, our children, the elderly, emotionally challenged, and the poor. We will seek rehabilitation beyond correction. We will extend opportunity to those locked out of opportunity. We will make friends of our enemies. We will make friends of our enemies. People, your people, shall no longer raise up weapons against one another. We will rather use our resources for the national good and become a beacon of life and goodwill to the world. And neither shall we learn hatred anymore. We will lie down in peace and not make our neighbors afraid. In you, O God, we discover our humanity. In our humanity, we discover our commonness. Beyond the difference of color, creed, origin, political party, ideology, geography, and personal preferences. We'll become greater stewards of your environment, preserving the land, reaping from it a sustainable harvest, and securing its wonder and miracle-giving power for generations to come. This is our benediction, that from these hallowed grounds, where slaves labored to build this shrine and citadel to liberty and democracy, let us all acknowledge, from the indigenous Native American to those who recently received their citizenship, from the African American to those whose foreparents came from Europe and every corner of the globe, from the wealthy to those struggling to make it, from every human being, regardless of their choices, that this is our country. As such, teach us, O God. As such, teach us, O God, to live in it, love in it, be healed in it, and reconcile to one another in it, lest we miss kingdom's goal. To your glory majesty, dominion, and power forever. Hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. In the strong name of our collective faith. Amen.
That is the Reverend Sylvester Beeman of the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Wilmington, Delaware, Joe Biden's hometown, President Biden's hometown. He was born in Niagara Falls Memorial Hospital in Upper New York and was raised by a single mother in a family of 9 children. He rose through the ranks quickly of the AME Church, and his Bethel AME Church in Wilmington counts as an intergenerational congregation with 50 ministries. He arrived there in 1993, and he and the Biden family became fast friends. That is the Reverend Sylvester Beeman, Dr. Chavis.
Yes, and it was a very fitting benediction. And we witnessed live the inauguration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. On behalf of the Black press, we wish them well. The celebration of the inauguration now continues after the swearing-in ceremony. We will continue to get some of the live feed and make commentary for the rest of this historic day. I'm so pleased that we were able to, Stacy, give this live feed to all of our listeners and to all of our supporters across the United States of America. And of course, we have other members of the Black press, other publishers that are going to be joining us over the next several hours as we continue to witness and to celebrate the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as President and Vice President of the United States of America.
Yeah, and just a little, again, following up on what we were talking about earlier, a little history. Gerald Ford was actually he's the only man to serve as president and vice president who was never elected to any of those positions. So that's an interesting bit of history when we talk about former vice presidents and becoming president. Dr. Chavis, so we like you said, we witnessed history. We also saw Vice President Kamala Harris wear a certain color there. She was wearing the color of Shirley Chisholm, honoring her 1972, Dr. Chavis, it was when Shirley Chisholm was elected.
Yes.
1972. She was honoring Shirley Chisholm, and she also used 2 Bibles for her swearing in as well. We see these things at the different inaugurations. Some mean more than others, and then some are just traditional. But this was something that Kamala Harris, the vice president now, had intended all along to pay tribute to Shirley Chisholm. And you heard President Biden allude to in his speech the suffrage movement. He talked about how women did not have the right to vote, and now you have a woman vice president.
Absolutely. I think that we not only saw new history made today, but the history that was made today has antecedents, has roots to the past. And I think that all of America, you look at the program for the inauguration ceremony, you had a diversity of singers, you had a diversity of poets, prayers, the speeches themselves were about the inclusiveness as you move toward a more perfect union. And also, I thought that in President Biden's inaugural address, he went straight to the point. He did not bite his tongue. He called out systemic racism. He called out some of the injustices. We're going to see now that we're going to take greater responsibility for the care of the environment, for the care of the climate, to end some of the racial disparities that were highlighted in both in the president's inaugural address. So I think people are going to go over this speech for all of the little fine tidbits. But for the Black press, I thought the fact about the affirmation of the importance of truth. He did make a reference to the rise of falsehoods, the rise of people believing in myths and stereotypes and getting all riled up over things that are not even true. So I think that's another reminder of the importance of the Black press, because we not only try to present the facts, advocate the truth, but we try to do it in a way that not only informs people, but also inspires people to be their greater and better self, rather than to rely on myths and innuendo and prejudices that hold the nation back and keep us from fulfilling what a real democracy is all about, where everybody is treated equally and justly.
Yeah, we should be hearing at some point this afternoon from Denise Rolock Barnes of the Washington Informer, who's there at the Capitol. So we should be getting a live report at some point. But also coming up in less than 20 minutes, Al McFarland, Insight News out in Minneapolis. It's always great to hear from Al McFarland. And then at 3 o'clock our time, Eastern time, I should say, and noon Pacific, Danny Bakewell Sr. of the Los Angeles Sentinel. So we're certainly looking forward to Mr. Bakewell and Larry Lee at 4 o'clock from the Sacramento Observer. We are looking forward to Larry.
Danny Baker is our chair emeritus. He's not only the publisher of the Los Angeles Sentinel and the LA Watch Times, Bakewell Media, and there in Los Angeles, but he's really one of the leaders of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. So we're glad that he will be joining us. I think this has been a great broadcast thus far. Now we still have a lot lined up
yes, we do.
For the official. They're going to have a virtual inaugural parade. There will be other performances. You notice that the mainstream media and throughout this inauguration, while Vice President Pence and Mrs. Pence was recognized at the podium for their presence, and I thought it was a good thing for them to be there. But you notice during the entire inaugural ceremony, not one time was the former president's name mentioned.
Not once.
And so that was a good thing, because the page has been turned. So there's no need to let the Trump book be the guidebook. We now have a new book, and it's called the Biden-Harris book. And that's where we're going to be proceeding for all of the executive orders that some are going to be signed today, Tracy, when they get to the White House. He's going to work today. So while this is a day of ceremony, it's also a day of work to try to repair some of the negative things that have been done and damaging and reactionary things, backward things that have been done during the last 4 years. So I think the nation's in good stead. You know, the whole inaugural ceremony was without any disruption. So we're thankful to the Secret Service and to all the law enforcement that held the ground and kept everything safe. And still throughout the day. So there's still many other festivities that we're going to reference in our continuing broadcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right for pointing out that the Secret Service, the National Guard, and the Capitol Police, DC Police, and other law enforcement agencies really, as you said, held it down. As far as so far, there's been no hitch that we know of. There's certainly been no outward show of any type of antagonism, any attacks. The things that they were concerned about just did not happen. We're glad to report that. I know oftentimes there are outlets that like the sensational and like the, as they used to say, if it bleeds, it leads. That's not the Black press.
Absolutely. And of course, the day is not over with yet. So we're going to continue to monitor and to report the news as it's made today. And I'm certainly there now. The inaugural delegations and motorcades being prepared for President Biden and Vice President Harris to arrive at the White House for the first time. That's another historic site that we want to capture in our photographs and our videos so that we can report what happened. I really liked the poem that our young sister recited. Very moving and very creative in the way she not only interplayed the words, but it was a powerful message. And again, I'm so proud of today's youth, particularly African American youth. To me, our young people today are the most gifted, the most talented, genius-laden generation of young people we've ever been blessed to witness.
Yeah, the
And
young.
I'm listening now to the motorcycles pass by the motorcade right here on Pennsylvania Avenue, as a lot of the procession is now proceeding.
Yeah, and the young poet Amanda Gorman from Los Angeles. She studies sociology at Harvard University. She's 22 years old, and she really put her heart into this, Dr. Chavis, and meant every word she said. She recently had made a comment that, and I'll quote her directly: "America is messy. It is still in its early development of all that we can become, and I have to recognize that in the poem," she said. "I cannot ignore that or erase it. And so I crafted an inaugural poem that recognizes these scars and these wounds. Hopefully, it will move us toward healing them." From 22 years old, what a statement.
Well, she's the youngest person to give an inaugural poem in the history of the country. And again, I know that poem is going to go down into the literary books as being not just a statement, but affirmed the truth. And I thought coming right after President Biden's inaugural address, her poem sort of encapsulated some of the essence of what this day represented, a day of truth. And sometimes the truth, you have to tell the truth, as her quote that you quoted. We can't just pretend like everything is right when we know everything is not right. You have to call out the wrong, but also lift up the right. Those things, the righteousness, because at the end of the day, the forces of righteousness always are able to overcome the forces of evil.
Yeah, indeed. And to see and hear it come from such a young voice, and you always talk about the millennials and the Generation Z. You must be proud, Dr. Chavis.
I'm very proud. Like I say, I'm so thankful that we have a conscious generation of young people that is rising up in their own stead, in their own vision. And that makes me even more confident about the future.
Yeah, and stay tuned, because coming up at 1 o'clock, in the 1 o'clock hour, we'll have Al McFarland of Insight News. We're also going to play a video that if you wasn't with us earlier, you'll be able to see Kamala Harris's message to the Black press and Black America, and an interview that Dr. Chavis, our president and CEO, did with Joe Biden in South Carolina. So stay tuned. We also, again, looking forward to our other publishers that will join us. This has been already a very historic day, not just for the country, but for the Black press of America. And we are very much proud to bring you this coverage, unprecedented coverage.
Absolutely. And because Vice President Kamala Harris was so close to Dana Bakewell, we want to play her segment near the time, or even while he's on with us, so he can comment on it. I don't think he's actually seen it.
Yeah.
But so this will be very uplifting to him to hear the words of Kamala Harris, because he played a role in helping her to get elected statewide as Attorney General first, and then as United States Senator from California. So this has been a historic day. And of course, I'm glad that in the earlier segment, we played that video of Vice President Biden when he first met with the Black press, and then also when he stressed the importance of the Black vote. And then he talked about the importance of healthcare, particularly for all people. He comes at it with a degree of sincerity, and he was very authentic in the way he related to us in Charleston, South Carolina that day. So we got excellent content. We'll keep, cutting it up and broadcasting to round out the day's activities of news. But the news of today, we have a new president of the United States of America. We have a new vice president of the United States of America, and it bodes well for Black America.
Yeah, and you mentioned the procession down Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, for the last block to the White House, we are told by the Biden-Harris team that they're going to actually walk that last block.
So maybe we can pick some of that up in our video stream. I think we still have the live video stream.
Yes, and so yeah, we'll be happy to bring that. In fact, we see them. That's Mike Pence, former vice president, on the steps with the current vice president Kamala Harris on the steps of the Capitol.
That's great.
And we see Mrs. Pence along with the first gentleman, or the second gentleman. I keep calling him the first gentleman because he's the first man in that role. So so it's a lot of history there, and it's good to see Dr. Chavis. It goes along with President Biden's speech, but it's good to see that bipartisanship right there.
Oh, absolutely, it's very important. We've had the transfer of power from Vice President Pence to Vice President Harris, and you can see the Harris family and the Pence family, they're talking to one another. I think that's a good, not just a symbol, but that's a reality that we're in a new place in the United States of America. And there you go. There is the new Vice President of the United States with her husband standing on the east steps of the United States Capitol.
Well, here's the thing with this picture we're seeing right now. This is usually what you see between the new president and the former president. They send them off this way. Of course, the former president in this case declined to be a part of this. And so Mike Pence really stood up here. He a lot of backlash from both sides.
And I think Donald Trump just missed an opportunity. I think Vice President Pence did the right thing. He showed his own character, not only by being present at the inauguration, but showing his support for the new administration that's now in office.
Yeah, and now we're proud to welcome from all the way from Minneapolis, from the Insight News, Al McFarland. Al McFarland, welcome to the Nnpa and Black Press of America's live coverage of the inauguration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Al, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. What a historic day. This is an amazing day. I'm so happy that up to now things have proceeded without incident, and hopeful and prayerful that they will continue that way. But I remain concerned because of so much having happened in the past couple of weeks that I think is not gone away yet. I don't know.
Well, we'll see. Well, at least thus far today, it has gone well. Al, we're so glad to see you, and we're glad you're on the case with Insight News there in Minneapolis. We're always glad to hear from you, and thank you for joining our live broadcast of the inauguration. And I think today was full of symbolism, but it was also full of a day of reality. There was a reality check that the dastardly acts on January the 6th with the violent white supremacist attack on the United States Capitol did not ultimately prevail. They tried to stop the certification of the Electoral College. They did not prevail. And the history of our country is that when we're challenged like that, it's important that we hold on to the truth, hold on to the facts, and keep pressing forward. There you still see the vice president still shaking hands. There are members of Congress there. There's Nancy Pelosi there with her husband, Chuck Schumer, the majority leader now of the Senate. We're looking forward to great things, Al. And of course, Vice President Biden, Brother McFarland, has announced that they're going to get some work done today. So this is not only a day of ceremony, this is a day of action in terms of public policy, in terms of executive actions that the new president of the United States intends to sign today, so that the first 100 days will be marked as days of progress for all of Americans.
I think it's important that he set the tone for his presidency, for his present term, of one of action, of focus, of delivering on the promises, and inviting the country, everybody in the country, to have confidence again that we can be part of the world. We can be ourselves in the world. That means leaders, be ourselves in this country. That means compassionate, committed to the principles and ideals of democracy, and ensuring that all of us, each and every one of us, can operate without fear and in a sense of dignity, in a sense of expectation that better days are yet ahead, despite the challenge of COVID-19 and despite the legacy of supremacist suppression and oppression against Black and brown bodies. Despite that, there is a spirit emerging, I believe, Ben, that he represents, and that's a spirit that continues to transition our people and our country towards our better and best selves.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and also today, underlining all of this that's happening today. Well, today is the swearing in of two Senate members from Georgia, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. So it's a historical day in a lot of ways, Dr. Chavis.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the Black vote, and Al, you may want to comment on this also. There was a tremendous voter turnout in Minnesota in November, in Georgia, as across the country. 80 million plus people voted for Biden and Harris, and that's why we had the transition of power today. So there was this speculation early on in 2020 whether or not the Black vote counted, whether or not our votes counted. We now see that voting and elections have consequences, tangible consequences, not just symbolic consequences. And so what we have to do is continue now. I'm hoping that the Democrats will reinstall the Voting Rights Act, named after John Lewis, and they would do something around the George Floyd Police and Justice Act. And of course, Al, you may want to comment about what is happening in the wake of George Floyd, since everything took place in your neighborhood.
Well, we call our neighborhood 38th, 39th in Chicago and South Minneapolis ground zero for the transformation that really is rocking not only Minnesota, not only South Minneapolis, but rocking the country. Dr. Ben, this transformation is rocking the world.
Yes.
The world witnessed in 8 minutes and in so many seconds the ugly underbelly of oppression, of supremacy, of utter and total disregard for humanity, human life, for the disregard, the absence of compassion, and the how ugly and horrific hatred looks, and entitled hatred that is institutionalized, empowered by a badge, by the law enforcement apparatus of a community and of a country. And we, have talked about this forever from the beginning, but now the entire world could see that what we've complained about, that they attempted to say is a one of, an aberration, is really the standard and has been the standard of our experience here. We talk in Minnesota about the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, but we also talk about the pandemic of 1619. And for some of us, we talk about the pandemic of 1492.
Yes.
And what is happening right now, I believe, and we owe it in part, at least to the power of the moment, the power of that 8 minutes and 40 seconds that the world stood still while George Floyd gave up the ghost, gave up his life right before our very eyes. What's happening now is an opportunity for us to go back and examine history and tell the truth. And what is required right now, and I think this is what the Biden-Harris administration will do, and what we will support in all of our states, all of our communities, is a truth-telling experience and expectation that is key to the transformation that we seek and that we expect. Ben, what we are, what we do, we bear witness. We're witnesses. We're storytellers as communicators, as journalists, as newspaper owners and newspaper newsmen and women. We document the story of our people as it unfolds. We contextualize it. We talk about what happened before and why we are here. And in telling that story, we also point pathways to the future, to opportunity, to what it means and what it could mean. At the end of the day, we are endeavoring to show both ourselves first and the world who we are, our true selves, and validate and value our truth. And to demonstrate that the truth really matters, Black Lives Matter, right? So one of the things that I see happening right now is the importance of documentation, of continuing to bring forth a narrative, an analysis of where we are as community, as country, and a narrative that describes where we are going, creating a story in which we win. Now, the power of this, Dr. Ben, is that our version of winning may not be exactly what other people call winning.
Yes.
Winning we're talking about might not depend on somebody else losing. We can describe a different method of analyzing and action based on different analyses that point to the best humane experience that our country and that the world can know. That's what I think. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think
we agree, Al. I think you hit a couple of important points. Well, several points. Number one, documenting the truth. See, it's one thing for us to hear the truth and pass it on, but we have to archive and document. So much revisionist history is going on. We need to go. Right now, there's an attempt to revise the impact of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They're getting ready to release the FBI files. And of course, the FBI files are full of untruths and myths and stereotypes. So now they're going to write books based on those myths and stereotypes about Dr. King, trying to undermine his sacred leadership, trying to undermine his intellectual and theological genius as he was as a young man, as a young civil rights leader. And so one of the things I've talked to Stacy about, and I'm going to mention to our board, I think the Nnpa should have a publishing arm. We should be publishing books about not only the history of the Black press, but the history of the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality in all of our communities, in Minneapolis, in St. Paul, in Detroit, in there are 200 cities that we need to document. I was just talking about what was going on in St. Augustine, Florida. Somebody needs to document that from a Black perspective. If we allow other people to write our history will be mistold, misinformed, and revised. So I think that as we witness this transition, Al, I'm glad you made the point. I agree with it. It reminds us of our responsibility, not only to inform people of the daily news, of the current news, because the news cycle has changed, but we have to remind people of the truth that gives rise to what happens today. You know, the past always informs the present and the future. But if we allow distortion of the past, then the present will be misinformed. And if the present is misinformed, certainly the future will be misinformed.
And as we speak, the president and vice president have left the Capitol. They are in their motorcade. We should be coming back with the live feed very shortly to see that walk to the White House that they're going to make in that last block.
I would like to get Al's response. Al, what do you think about us getting in more into the publishing of books? And I know we're in a digital age, everything is virtual, but I don't want us to ever underestimate the importance of putting something on paper and having that bound into a book so it gets into the libraries. Then you can digitize it and people can read it on their device. But we should never give up the importance of writing books.
And it's not either or, it's both and. We need to be pioneers in the digital arena to ensure that every possible platform that is available for us to document our existence, our history, and our future, that we fully occupy those spaces and use them. But you are absolutely correct, Dr. Ben. We have to hold sacred the printed word. And, you know, I get upset in Minnesota when I hear some young people say, oh, you know, people aren't reading the papers anymore, but then they turn around and decry the lack of literacy among our children. And so we have to bring our tools, our platforms, our print media, our newspapers in front of families, children, schools, libraries, just as you're saying, in the newspaper and in books and in magazines. I think if we don't do it, it won't be done. So I totally agree that that's a great idea. I believe what we're doing now is phenomenal. What I did last month, Dr. Ben, is kind of reflecting what you're saying about being omnidirectional in our communication strategy. We got a contract with the state of Minnesota Department of Health to conduct town hall meetings about COVID-19. And 7 days a week at noon, I went live to YouTube, Facebook, and interviewed state leaders, local leaders, community leaders, agency heads and organizations, asking the same question: what is the impact of COVID-19 on Black people? And what neighborhoods, what are the counts? And so what I discovered is that the state was at first generally glossing over the impact of the numbers for Black people who were affected and who were hospitalized and who were dying. But the data was there, but nobody was calling attention to it. And if we don't call attention to it, it'll be tucked away somewhere, and we will suffer for that. So what we're doing now is using this technology to make sure that our voice, our vision, our analysis is available in this format as well. And I think it's important.
Yeah, we see President Obama and the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, leaving the Capitol. Again, we're following this because we expected to see Vice President Kamala Harris and President Joe Biden walk the last block to the White House as he formally sits in the Oval Office. Al McFarland, I know you've been talking a lot about what's going on there, but the feeling you got from your readers leading up to this day, can you relay that to us?
Well, I think people are breathing a sigh of relief, and I think there's a sense of at last, finally, we're here. We're done with Donald Trump and the idea of Trumpism, even though challenges lie ahead. But the fact that he has departed and that the Biden-Harris team has now taken its position in the White House at the head of our government, I think is reflected by this sigh of relief in the community abroad. Looking at these pictures and listening at the inauguration today, I remember when President Obama was inaugurated, I was there, and I could remember and point out to my wife exactly where I was standing in that crowd. There was a sea of people back during the inauguration that I attended, and I can tell you I was so proud. It was like 20 degrees. They're lucky today. I think it's 40 degrees today in DC, right? 40 degrees or so. Beautiful day, but it was 20 degrees and windy, cold.
Yes.
When President Barack Obama was inaugurated, and we stood out there under all of that scaffolding and the arena watching the inauguration, and it was so cold and the seats were tight together back then. People you didn't know, you huddled up to. We're best friends now. You'd say to the lady or to the guy sitting next to you that you never met before, but you both knew that you were cold, and you both benefit from sharing body heat.
Exactly.
And sharing the moment, sharing the spirit of the moment. Aretha Franklin singing, Maya Angelou reading poetry. What a wonderful day. So this reminds me of that. It makes me think about having been there on the grounds for the eventful inauguration of President Barack Obama, and now we see his Vice President Joe Biden inaugurated, and Kamala Harris ascending to the position of Vice President. I say I'm looking at this as preparation for the Kamala Harris presidency. I don't want to jinx anything by speaking that way, but I tell you, that's how I feel. And I see that when I hear President Joe Biden describe himself as a transitional figure, transformational figure,
yes,
I'm thinking what he means, he's transitioning the country towards moving in a way that really reflects access and inclusion, and the evidence of that, in my view, and if she chooses, might be a Kamala Harris presidency in 4 or 8 years. That's what I'm thinking. That's my personal private thought. Dr. Ben, what do you think?
Our thoughts are aligned. I think the same thing. I think when he decided to pick Kamala Harris as his vice president, it wasn't just for the next 4 years. It was for the next 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can happen. I think a lot is going to be dependent. We saw what a miserable job what happened over the last 4 years. So now there's an opportunity. I mean, when you start at the bottom, you can only rise because we're at the bottom of public policy in America on a federal level. But also, I think we're going to have to work on these state legislators also.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to work on the redistricting. The new census is coming out. Lines are going to be withdrawn. So I think this is a time for further engagement. But I think having somebody like Joe Biden as president, who is articulating a future vision for America that's more inclusive, not less inclusive. I think that's why he's signing the new executive orders on immigration today.
Mm-hmm.
We're joining the Paris Climate Accords today. And we're doing things today that give a signal. So I agree with you, Al, that this transition, the question is, are we transitioning forward or are we transitioning backwards? Obviously, the last 4 years, there was a deliberate attempt to go backwards.
Mm-hmm.
That whole term, "Make America Great Again," that was a code for the white supremacists to come out of the cracks. Now we're getting a different vision. And I hope that, and the role, I would say, of the Black press now is to re-enliven, re-inspire, re-motivate our people to strive for excellence in science, in culture, in sociology, in education, in all of the fields of endeavor. We have to strive for excellence. And I think that there will be a resonating response, Al, as you represent, the best of our publishers across the country. And at the same time, we got to stay in business.
Mm-hmm.
So sustainability of Black-owned businesses. We got to rebuild our neighborhoods, rebuild our communities. And I think for Congresswoman Fudge now to be the new Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, unfortunately, very little was done, even though we had a brother over HUD. So now we got to play catch up, and so much to be done. So I'm hopeful and grateful for the opportunity, and I think I would just respond lastly on this point, Al. I think we are strategically, by God's blessing, in place in all these urban and suburban communities around the country. And the extent to which I see the Black press also as we're the voice of the Black community, but we're also the drumbeat. We got to make sure that the messages of our drum is in sync, is in a certain rhythm that gets us to put forth our best. And that's why I'm looking forward for a lot of creativity. And I think you're right. We got to use all media platforms, multimedia, and we got to use social media, but content. The content of what we put on the media. That's where the genius of the Black press comes in as we make these analyses. And these programs that we're doing now daily, we only had 7:30 Eastern time every day now because there was a demand for this information. And we're all day today on the inauguration because there was a demand from our constituencies for us to be present and vital and kind of sharing the information that needs to be shared in real time.
Yeah, and you, Al McFarland, Insight News, you mentioned Kamala Harris, of course, and her future. Just a brief, everyone, on Kamala Harris. Her father was a Jamaican. He taught at Stanford University. Her mother was the daughter of an Indian diplomat, and her mother was a cancer researcher. Her younger sister, Maya, later became a public policy advocate, and after studying political science and economics at Howard University there in D.C., Kamala Harris earned a law degree from Hastings College. You know, she worked as the deputy DA in Oakland from 1990 to 1998, and she quickly rose through the ranks. She became district attorney in 2004 and then attorney general in 2010. So she's been, you're talking about a rise. Her rise has really been steady. It's been something that you could see. She gave a speech at the 2012 Democratic National Convention that really put her on the national map. And of course, in 2017, she began her first and now only term in the Senate, because here she is now, 4 years later, Vice President Kamala Harris.
I became acutely aware of Kamala Harris when she was part of the first impeachment trial of, well, maybe before that. I can't remember what it was. It was a hearing. It wasn't the impeachment trial, but there were hearings that she was in before. And I just remember the incisiveness and the audacity, the calm fortitude with which she attacked the question at hand. And it wasn't the impeachment, it was a previous event, but I became both keenly aware of her and her prowess as a prosecutor, as a lawyer, and as a leader in the Senate arena. You know, but you were mentioning that her roots include that she's a Jamaican and South Indian. And I think that there's opportunity for us there. I'm a Jamaican. I'm a Cuban Jamaican. That's my heritage, Cuba, Jamaica. And I'm connected with my Cuban, Jamaican, Afro-Latino, Afro-Caribbean family, not only in the Caribbean, but around the country. I have regular conversations with family members in London who are Jamaican and who live in London, and with people in Jamaica and around the country. The point I'm making is that we are looking through this technology at different ways to configure and to understand the flow of the world. Ben, when you and I were kids, our parents told us that you can go outside, Al, but don't cross the street and don't cross the alley.
Right.
On this block. And so we at 5-year-olds thought that our neighborhood was our block. Now, because of technology, Dr. Ben, we know that the whole world is our neighborhood.
Yes.
We also know, because of our feelings and because of genealogy and because of technology, that we are connected to each other all over the world, that there is a diaspora that we are part of. And so we're coming to understand and know what that means. And so, I'm imagining, and I'll be examining as a reporter, editor, the feelings of Jamaica and Jamaicans in the United States about Kamala Harris. I'll be reaching out to the Indian community. And there hasn't been a lot of specific and intentional interaction between African Americans. I call myself an African American. I actually call myself an African in the New World, a New World African. But there hasn't been a lot of intentional engagement between, from my point of view, the Black community, the African American community, and the South Asian or the Indian community. Now, this is a moment of opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I think that we also have an opportunity to understand how our businesses connect with our people anywhere we are on the planet. And I think that the Black Press of America, Nnpa, ought to be the home for that outreach and engagement, for clarifying our connections to each other across the planet. Because what we're doing here is also happening, and has happened in some ways, in Johannesburg and in Harare and in Kampala, and certainly in Kingston, Jamaica, and places around the world. In South America, we don't know that that there are more of us in South America than there are of us here.
That's right.
We need to learn that and know it. And how then do we benefit each other and benefit ourselves and grow as markets through transactions and through knowing that we can serve each other and serve the purpose of elevating humanity. I once said, no contact, no contract. If we don't make contact with each other, we can't do business. But if we are intentional in creating contact, we create with the intent of creating business, and business sustains us. I know that many immigrants codify their experience here by direct foreign investment, it's called. They send money home to Jamaica, to Hong Kong, to China. And so they are drivers of economies of other nations because of the earnings they have here. So what is our experience? We do the same thing locally. We send money from Detroit to uncle or aunt who might be in Holly Springs, Mississippi. We used to, maybe not as much as we used to, but we've done that. So the question is, if we elevate our ability to understand how our movement of money impacts and benefits our people around the world, it'll create new business opportunities. That's what I think. Finally, I remember we had an Nnpa annual convention here in Minnesota the year after President Obama came into office. And he sent out some people on his team, the people that were leading the African American initiative in the Obama White House, to talk to Nnpa. And what they told us at one of our sessions, Dr. Ben, was that when they took over the reins of government, walked into all of the departments. For example, they said commerce. We kind of had no idea of how much money was being moved in the Department of Commerce. At the time, he said $500 billion in their budget. We just weren't really aware of that. So what it means today, we have the experience of the eye-opening, the eye-popping numbers that the Obama team walked into, and how they had to use a quick study to save the economy and turn the country around. And they did it. They made it happen. But we're at the same place now. And so I believe, Dr. Ben, that we have to tell ourselves as business owners and our community, business owners, entrepreneurs, that we have a role to play and that we have to measure the progress of the society by the dollars that we're able to bring by our engagement in the revenue streams associated with saving the economy, healing the nation.
Absolutely.
I think we got to pay attention to the
Well, Al, I want to call upon you. We're still putting the Midwinter Conference together. It's going to be next week. I'm going to talk to Claudette, Stacy. I would like to have a session on what you just proposed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can, it's going to be all virtual. So we're probably going to pre-record it, but I want to be back in touch with you.
Okay.
Because I think you've touched on a number of points that we need to connect these dots in the Caribbean, in Brazil, and Africa, from not just from a heritage perspective, cultural perspective, but a business perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we should learn from what was said at that meeting with the former Obama administration people. Because I think those opportunities are even greater today. But it's knowing those facts, getting that information in a timely manner, and acting on it. You'd be surprised, a lot of our Black-owned businesses didn't get the PPP because they didn't file.
Right.
And so we have to not only make our demands, but we have to make sure that we get the information out in a format and a language that our people can respond in kind and take advantage of other opportunities. Believe me, I'm just getting a note now that I'm calling Obama, President Biden is signing papers right now. He's executing some of the executive orders right now. We'll try to see if we can get a live stream to find out what it is, but he's following through on his, like I say, if I know anything about Biden, he's a man of his word.
Well, apparently, Dr. Chavis, we thought he had left the Capitol. He did not leave the Capitol. He was signing those executive orders right there at the Capitol. So even before he goes into the Oval Office, apparently, if they are indeed the executive orders, and there was several that I could see him signing as we speak, then, like you said, he is certainly not waiting to get to work. So very interesting. We're going to hear at 2 o'clock at the top of the hour, we're going to hear from Denise Rolock Barnes of the Washington Informer. She was at the Capitol for the inauguration, and so she's going to give us some real good insight at 2 and at 2:15. Jim Washington of the Atlanta Voice and Dallas Weekly is going to join us. So we're looking forward to that, Al. Again, you bring up some great points. Dr. Chavis, Al McFarland touched on Africa. Well, in 2019, Al, Dr. Chavis and I joined him, I should say, in Africa. We witnessed the election there in Malawi, which was really interesting how they even allowed the prisoners to cast ballots. Dr. Chavis, you can speak a lot more about that.
Well, African democracy is, to some extent, advanced stage beyond the United States. They didn't have voter suppression. Like, keep in mind, here we are in the 21st century, still powers that be are making it difficult at state level to cast your vote. And there's a live there now of the president and vice president of the United States. And we're going to take a little live stream. We'll come right back. Let's see what's going on.
Photograph, folks, because of those huge mirrors on either side. It is not a big space at all.
Saw the fireplace there. I'm such a nerd. I think I know how many fireplaces are in the Capitol. So that's going to be a quiz for you right now, Janet.
Trivia question for me. Ron is asking how many fireplaces
I'm
are
going
in
to
the
give you 3
Capitol.
choices.
Okay.
Okay, well, 120, 160, 144.
We're witnessing the signing of certain documents by the president of the United States.
All right, here comes the signing, folks.
Before we begin, Mr. President, after you're done signing the documents, when you're ready for the ceremony to end, give me a signal nod. I'll have press escorted out of the room. Once the press are on the stairs secured, we'll go ahead and be ready to move on to the Ohio Park corridor. Excuse me.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready for the signing.
So we can see President Biden here preparing sign in the president's room. A small room on the Senate side of the Capitol. We have very exclusive access to see this today, the way that we're seeing this. There'll be some parts that we don't get to see, but they're being filmed for archival purposes, for posterity.
Again, I want to go back. The reason why we have the president's room,
Yeah.
George Washington. He said the president should have a room where from time to time he can meet with Congress and sign bills, or not sign bills, but have interaction.
Yeah, and it's another holdover from a different era, folks, when the term of our president and our Congress overlapped differently. So we tend to think of inaugurations happen in January, new Congress comes in January 3rd, right? But that's been different over the years.
Oh, let's watch.
So each are signed with a different pen. It's interesting. This is a signing ceremony, and it's I'm not sure what they're signing. I guess it's the official becoming official the officially becoming president, which the first act of the president. And there is
he's already president. He's already officially the president.
Right.
These are ceremonial documents that each president and vice president sign.
I needed all the help I could get before we get out for
Dr. Ben, I'm hopeful that we can, as an Nnpa, restore our regular and periodic visits with the president at the White House.
So you don't recognize some folks, members of the Joint Congressional Committee.
Exactly. We're going to work that out for this coming March.
President Biden and
because
President Harris.
it may be virtual to start out because of the pandemic, but we will have access. We'll have more access to this president and vice president probably in any other previous administration.
Friends, when the president, vice president leaves this room, they're going towards the Ohio clock. Now, the Ohio clock has...
Why is it called the Ohio clock?
Well, it's interesting. A senator from Connecticut, Senator David Daggett, asked a clockmaker from Philadelphia, Thomas Voigt, to complete it. He does in 1816, but Ohio came to the Union in 1803. I don't quite get it.
It's a mystery, and no one knows the answer. This clock has come to be known as the Ohio clock. It stands in the Senate hallway, which we're going to be seeing the party passing through soon on their way to the rotunda for the presentation of gifts. We're just wrapping up the signing ceremony here. And so we're on the Senate side of the building in these hallways, which are beautifully decorated. Again, if we can call your attention to the floor for just a second, Minton tiles, they're an encaustic tile. Which means that the way that they're glazed is a little bit different than the kind of tile we're used to in our kitchens and baths. They're made in Stoke-upon-Trent, England. They're custom made for the Capitol, hallways lined with these.
Friends, don't just think that the members can walk on these aisles. You can. How? Visit Congress. Janet, I think the number one question that's asked of us, how do I visit Congress? If not the question within the top three. And depending on what part of the building you're in, you will likely walk on these aisles. They're not something that's just sacred for the members. To the contrary.
That's a great point. The one place you'll see the Minton tiles like that is on the first floor on the Senate half of the building, which we won't be seeing on our cameras today, but we can normally take folks there on tour. The hallways were decorated by Constantino Brumidi, the artist who painted the frescoes inside the Capitol that we were looking at a little bit earlier.
I'm not done with this Ohio clock. So, ladies and gentlemen, there was a person known as the man with the green hat. Yes, during Prohibition, he used to sell alcohol in the House office buildings. It was known he had an office. He was exposed, and he moves to the Senate side. And legend has it, in the Ohio clock, spirits might have been kept in that clock, and members had access to it.
I mean, the period where alcohol sale, manufacture, distribution, except for medicinal purposes, the period when that was illegal in the United States was an interesting one here on Capitol Hill. And there are rumors all over of hidden compartments and various places where things must have been hidden. And they create this kind of mythology around this. And I got to say, there are plenty of mysteries. We don't know why the Ohio clock is called the Ohio clock, but there are plenty of tales of this secret compartment is where, they hid the contraband during the Prohibition period. But I think a lot of them more likely are just quirks of the architecture, because as we've discussed, this is a building that's been built in so many different pieces, and each piece added on to the next, right? And every space enduring these constant changes in what the space is being used for over the years. And what's interesting about this room, the president's room, is it really only has this purpose.
Yes.
What we're seeing happening in here today, this is essentially, and it's a very small space. I want to emphasize that, folks, because space is at a premium inside the Capitol, and there is no such thing as.
So the signing ceremony, the first official action taken by the newly sworn president of the United States, occurs in the president's room just off the Senate chambers in the Capitol. And it happens after the departure of the former president and first lady. The new president gathers there with his aides, members of Congress, and that's where he signs nominations and sometimes memorandums, proclamations, or even executive orders. That tradition began with President Reagan in 1981. So that's what was going on there, what we were witnessing. And so it could very well be that there was an executive order in there.
Very good, very good. So I want to go back to what Al McFarland was suggesting. Al, I think that the engagement with the new Biden-Harris administration has to be consistent, not just doing points of ceremony. So I think that we're going to get a list of all the new cabinet members, all the chief of staff. And one of the things that about working with government officials, you get to them by knowing their chiefs of staffs.
Right.
So Tracy, we're going to make sure that all of our publishers have the information to reach out to the various cabinet members, the chief of staff. And of course, now we have Brother Cedric Richmond, who is the senior advisor. He will be in the Oval Office with the president and vice president at all times.
He's doing a wonderful job. I've been watching him. He's amazing.
Yes, yes. And he's a friend of the Black press. So we're definitely going to have unfettered access to the White House. We're also beefing up our staff. I want to have someone from the Nnpa at the White House briefings. Of course, in the past, we have not had the budget for that, but I think we've made arrangements where we have the appropriate appropriation so that we can be there. That way we can give feed to our member publishers on a real-time basis from the White House of all the news that's made every day, actually. Not only domestic, but also international policies. And as you've stated previously, Al, we have to see ourselves not only as the voice of Black America, but we have to see ourselves as the voice of African people throughout the diaspora. And believe me, there are brothers and sisters in Brazil that want to connect with us just as bad as we want to connect with them.
Absolutely. Colombia.
Making it happen. They speak Portuguese, we speak English. You speak Spanish and English. And because of the COVID-19, we weren't able to do what we normally do. The Cuban ambassadors invited us, the Black press, annually to come to the Cuban embassy. And I'm sure that Biden is going to restore proper relations with our Cuban brothers and sisters as well. So there's a lot of opportunity throughout the diaspora, both on the business side and on the public policy side.
Dr. Chavis, let me take a minute just to thank you and the team, Stacy, the team at Nnpa, the headquarters. You've done phenomenally in pressing the argument for business for Black newspapers through Nnpa. And I can say without equivocation that the Nnpa has delivered advertising dollars to Black newspapers such as Insight News and our colleagues around the country. And I think you've done work that has been unprecedented. And I think still you've only scratched the surface. Yes. I believe that what you are positioning the organization to do is to bring us into the fullness of potential revenue that we both need and deserve. That is an appropriate claim on the Treasury for the development of our people. You mentioned it earlier. We need to be able to tell Black businesses how and why they should be getting PPP. But that telling ought not be simply a news story, though it is a big news story, but it also ought to be organized marketing, selling, telling, where the government, because it's intentional, agrees to purchase space in all of the Black newspapers in the country to get our people in line for utilizing the recovery strategies that PPP funding represents. The same is true with COVID-19, the vaccinations. There ought to be significant, massive investment explaining assuring people that are skeptical for good reason about the vaccine. And
Yes.
that's a question of education. And the best educator, among the best educators in the Black community, would be our organization, our members, the Black Press of America. We've got a unique, special, important, critical role in helping this nation survive, come through the pandemic, and in saving lives in our communities that are more at risk than others. What's happening yesterday, Dr. Ben, I had the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, and the Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan, on my 1 o'clock program. And what's happening now is that the government here, and I think it's happening around the country, is saying, they're articulating an intent to be governing with a lens, through a lens of equity. That's new language. They haven't said it before, but that's what they're saying now. We need to engage the future through a lens of equity. That means we have to be prepared to demonstrate what equity is and what the business financial revenue implications of that are, and that we can measure this because it's measurable.
Exactly. I agree. And the whole question of equity, we need to unpack that term, not only from a business perspective, but also from a public policy perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right on target, Al. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and don't forget, coming up at 2 o'clock, we're going to get a live report from the Capitol. And we're also going to have Jim Washington of the Atlanta Voice join us at 2:15. And Danny Bakewell Sr. of the Los Angeles Sentinel will join us. And also Larry Lee of the Sacramento Observer. He'll join us at 4 o'clock. In fact, we're looking at more pictures now. And apparently, it looks now that there will be the Bidens will be leaving the Capitol and heading to the White House. Historic day all the way around. We saw a lot out. We watched a young African American lady, 22 years old, gave an outstanding poem, a phenomenal poem she read there at the inauguration. We also saw the diversity. We saw so much diversity today. We had not seen anything like that before. We talked about this earlier, Al, but I'll go back to you on it. How encouraged are you by that?
I'm encouraged. I watched almost tearfully as the young poet made her presentation with power, with clarity, with conviction, with grace. And she represented, I believe, the best of us, the vision and the evidence that the work we have done is bearing fruit. She is the fruit of the work that we've committed our lives to, Dr. Ben and Stacy. So I'm encouraged, but I also am mindful that being encouraged is not enough. Now we have to redouble our efforts to be present, to be clear, and to tell the truth wherever we are. Tell the truth everywhere, to everybody, all the time. And the truth has to be the path for examining the situations, the histories, the strategies and policies that have put us in the quandary that we're in. The truth that we have to present is the pathway to healing. The healing is not only for us, though we have to be about our healing, but the healing that we will experience, can experience, is healing for humanity, because we'll examine the tough questions, the hard questions of how human beings have failed each other and how important it is to go beyond failure to find redemption, clarity, reparations. And we believe that repair is possible. So
yes.
That's what I say. We have to really work harder now. The work begins today. And we have to push. The president and the vice president, I believe, are asking us to push, not to stand by and admire the problem, but now to work as hard as we can, pushing them to their best selves and best performance as well.
Absolutely. And believe me, we are going to push, and we're going to push consistently, Al, to make sure that the Biden-Harris administration is able to accomplish the great promise. I was asked earlier today how I see that. To me, today is a day of promise, a day of opportunity. But, you know, promises, what's afforded in terms of opportunities that are given have to be taken advantage of, have to be acted upon. Freedom does not come by osmosis. It comes through struggle. It comes through engagement. And certainly we're going to push, to use your term, Al, every day in the interest of Black America and in the interest of African people throughout the diaspora.
I remember, Ben, when they first announced Kamala Harris as Joe Biden's nominee at the convention. I think they played Curtis Mayfield when she walked onto the stage.
Yes.
And that music is like burned in my heart, in my mind, in my spirit, because she came out gliding almost, and she was gliding on the history and on the sound of our commitment to moving on up.
Yes.
To being ourselves. And so I think that's where we are now. I think, I'm looking for, the poet who did the poem for the inauguration. I was telling my wife, Bobby, that probably in a matter of minutes or days, the hip hop artist, great hip hop artist, will be bringing that to us, bringing us that to us in music.
Exactly.
And so we have so much to be grateful for, but so much work to do. And I think it's just a question of rolling up our sleeves and staying focused and producing and measuring results as we go.
Absolutely.
Then I just want to say again, I don't know if I finished my thought, but I really want to thank you personally for your history of service and leadership. You have been a legend in your own right. I've read about you, knew about you, heard about you in the several iterations of your career. And you bring all of that with humility, with humbleness, and with grace to the service of our country and our community and our people in your leadership role at Nnpa. And you bring a moral force, a moral guidance, but that is also at the center of the quest for equality, for dignity, and for advancement. And that advancement is both in the social, the business, the economic, the cultural plane, all of those things together. So I just want to, in case you don't hear it from enough of us publishers, speak on behalf of all of the publishers, saying that we appreciate vision, work, history, your resume, and your consistency in leading and in serving.
Well, thank you, Al. Well, I get my inspiration from publishers like you, Al, and I'm looking forward. I believe our better days and our best days are yet ahead, and I think we've laid a great foundation to move forward. We now have a great opportunity with the new Biden-Harris administration, and of course, when we decided to do this live broadcast today, we didn't want to miss this opportunity to not only to talk to you, Al, and to the other publishers of the Nnpa, but to bear witness to the history that is being made and to recommit so that as we go into Black History Month 2021, we not only cite the history of the past, but we make new history in this year of our Lord.
Well, and also, Al, raising the profile of the Black press has been something that has been going on since Dr. Chavis took the helm. And now every Sunday morning, at 11 a.m. on PBS and PBS World, the Chavis Chronicles, in which he has segments about Meet the Black Press and so many of the things that are important to Black America and the Black press is brought out in the Chavis Chronicles every Sunday morning on PBS and PBS World. 100 million or so households. So the Black press's profile has certainly been raised thanks to the efforts of Dr. Chavis, thanks to the efforts of publishers like yourself and our chair who we had on earlier, Karen Carter Richards. So the Black press is thriving at a time, Al, in which many are faltering. We see mainstream papers shuttering their doors on a regular basis. Many have gone all digital, and even in that space, they're not publishing daily. Well, the Black press is publishing all the time.
I think there's an opportunity too to look at the market differently. Obviously, we focus on talking to our people, but what I know is that the rest of the world is watching us too. And so we have to be sure and just be confident that as we speak our truth to ourselves, that we are aware that the speaking that we do really is being monitored and utilized. And so if we know that, we should be intentional and understand that that's a part of a market. And it's a market that we can grow our businesses with and through as well. You are right. Here in Twin Cities, a number of alternative and weekly white papers, neighborhood papers, have folded up, closed shop. And so there's a vacuum there. And I bought some equipment from one of the larger community newspapers here, and some news racks and distribution locations, et cetera. And I told him that our intent is to keep those news racks in place where they are in a suburban or semi-suburban area that I'm not strong in yet, but I believe that there are people who want to be and call themselves woke, and they're looking for information. And I believe we have the information. So that's what I think is the opportunity in part. We have to keep being centered in our truth, our history, our legacy, but the story we're telling ourselves is a story that the world needs as well.
Absolutely. And we're going to take a break and rejoin you at 2 o'clock. Al McFarland of Insight News, we really, really appreciate you and all that you do. Remember this: the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, but the optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. We will be back at 2 o'clock. So let it be known, join the Black Press at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you. We'll see you.
All right. God bless.